The summer night in California felt like a soft, warm blanket. The stars twinkled above, and the air was sweet with the scent of blooming jasmine. I stood outside our house, sipping on a glass of wine, and felt a familiar heaviness in my heart. 5 years of marriage to Jason had settled into a routine that felt more like a comfortable old sweater than the exciting adventure I had once imagined. I could barely remember the last time we had laughed together or shared a spontaneous moment. "Hey, you okay?" Jason called from inside, pulling me out of my thoughts. His voice was warm, but I sensed an underlying concern. "Just enjoying the night," I replied, forcing a smile. I turned my gaze back to the sky, searching for answers among the stars. Did I really want this? Was this all there was for me? A few days later, I found myself in an art gallery, one of those trendy places filled with abstract paintings and sculptures that made you think too much. I had come here to escape, to be around creativity, something I felt was missing in my life. That's when I saw him, Ethan. He stood near a large canvas, his intense gaze fixed on the colors swirling on the surface. There was something magnetic about him, a kind of energy that radiated from where he stood. I felt my breath catch in my throat. It had been so long since someone had looked at me like that. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Ethan said, turning to me with a smile that lit up his face. "It is," I replied, my heart racing. "It's like it's alive." He stepped closer, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him. Art has a way of capturing emotions, don't you think? His voice was smooth, inviting. "Absolutely," I said, surprised at how easy the conversation flowed. We talked about the paintings, about life, and I felt something awaken inside me. Laughter bubbled up between us, each shared joke pulling me further away from the weight of my life with Jason. "You know," Ethan said, leaning in slightly, "I think we should explore more art together. There's a gallery downtown with a new exhibit. Want to join me?" I hesitated, the thought of Jason creeping into my mind. But the thrill of the invitation sent a shiver of excitement through me. "Sure, I'd like that." As I walked away from the gallery, my heart was racing. What was happening to me? I had a husband who loved me, yet here I was, eager to meet someone else. I thought of Jason's face, his kindness, and the life we had built together. But then I thought of Ethan's smile, the way he made me feel like I was seen, like I mattered. "Am I betraying him?" I whispered to myself, the question hanging in the air as I drove home. But deep down, I sensed a part of me that had long been dormant, and it was awakening with a vengeance. That night, I lay in bed next to Jason, listening to his soft breathing. I felt the warmth of his body next to mine, but my mind was elsewhere. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Ethan. "Are you thinking about something?" Jason asked, his voice breaking the silence. "Just work," I lied, turning to face him. "Okay," he said, sensing my distance. I could see the concern in his eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to share my thoughts. As I drifted off to sleep, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Could I allow myself to feel something for Ethan? What did that mean for me? For Jason? I felt trapped between shadows and desires, each pulling me in a different direction. And as the night deepened, I knew that this was just the calm before the storm, a storm that would shake the very foundation of my life. As the days passed, my encounters with Ethan became more frequent. Each meeting, disguised as a simple friendship, felt like walking a tightrope above a chasm of temptation. I could feel the thrill in my veins, but there was also a nagging sense of guilt that wrapped around my heart like a vice. "You're lost in thought again," Ethan said one afternoon as we sat at a small cafe, the sun spilling golden light over our table. I looked up, meeting his intense gaze. There was something magnetic about him that made it hard to look away. I was just thinking about how different my life feels right now, I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady. Different how? He asked, leaning closer, a playful smile on his lips. I hesitated. How could I explain this whirlwind of emotions? I guess I just feel alive when I'm with you, I finally replied, my heart racing at my own honesty. Ethan chuckled softly, but his expression turned serious. Is that so bad? To feel alive? I could feel the weight of his question, pushing against the walls I had built around my heart. I thought of Jason, my husband, and all the moments we had shared. Flashbacks filled my mind. Our laughter over dinner, lazy Sunday mornings, and the quiet comfort of routine. But those memories felt distant now, overshadowed by the excitement Ethan brought into my life. Later that week, we met again at an art exhibit. The atmosphere buzzed with creativity, and I felt more alive than I had in years. Ethan stood beside me, his fingers brushing against mine as we admired a painting that depicted a stormy sea. I love how art can stir emotions, I said, turning to him. He nodded, his eyes sparkling. Just like life, right? It's all about the highs and lows. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. Life with Jason had become a series of flat notes, while Ethan was a melody that resonated deep within me. As the evening wore on, we left the gallery and wandered down the moonlit streets. The air was crisp, and the city seemed to hum with possibilities. Ethan stopped suddenly, turning to face me. Can I ask you something? He said, his voice low and serious. I nodded, my heart racing. What do you really want? His question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I wanted to scream that I was torn, that I felt like I was living a double life. But instead, I found myself stepping closer to him. I don't know, I confessed. I feel guilty for even saying this, but being with you makes me feel something I thought I lost. Ethan's gaze softened, and before I could think twice, he leaned in, capturing my lips with his. The kiss ignited a surge of emotions within me. Guilt, exhilaration, desire. It was everything I had been craving, and yet everything that terrified me. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. What have we just done? I murmured, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't know, he replied, his eyes searching mine. But it felt right, didn't it? I wanted to agree, but the weight of my marriage pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. The exhilaration was quickly replaced by a wave of guilt. Ethan, I can't keep doing this. What about Jason? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I get it. But you have to ask yourself, what do you really want? Are you happy? His words echoed in my mind, and for the first time, I really considered them. I thought of Jason's smile, the life we had built together, and the love that had once filled our home. But then, I thought of Ethan. The thrill, the passion, the longing that awakened something deep within me. As I stood there in the moonlit street, caught between two worlds, I felt the weight of a decision looming over me. The kiss with Ethan had opened a door I could not close. I was left with a choice that could change everything. Would I continue this dangerous dance, or would I turn back to the safety of my marriage? I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs. The thrill of desire battled against the chains of guilt that held me captive. No matter what I chose, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The air felt heavy as I moved through the house, each step echoing the turmoil inside me. I wore a brave face around Jason, but inside, I was a storm of confusion and guilt. The moments with Ethan played on repeat in my mind, his laughter and the way he looked at me igniting a fire I had thought was long gone. I tried to push those memories away, but they clung to me like shadows. "Are you okay?" Jason's voice broke through my thoughts as we sat at the dinner table. He looked at me with concern, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. It twisted my heart. "Yeah, just a bit tired," I replied, forcing a smile. I could feel the tension between us, thick enough to cut with a knife. Jason nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. After dinner, I washed the dishes, my hands moving on autopilot. Each clink of the plates reminded me of the distance growing between us. Jason wandered into the living room, flipping through the channels on the TV, and I could hear the faint sounds of laughter from a sitcom. It felt foreign, like an echo of a life I no longer recognized. As I dried my hands, my phone buzzed on the counter. My heart raced as I saw Ethan's name flash across the screen. I hesitated for a moment, the fear of being caught creeping in, but the desire for his attention pulled me in. I quickly glanced at Jason, who was still absorbed in the TV, and then I picked up my phone. "Hey," I texted back, my fingers trembling slightly. The response came almost immediately. "Can we meet? I need to see you." My breath caught in my throat. Meeting him would mean stepping further into the chaos, but the thought of seeing him lit a spark of excitement in me. I glanced at Jason again, and my heart sank. I knew I was playing with fire, but I felt so lost. "Okay," I typed quickly. "Where?" "Same place as before?" he replied. I nodded to myself, though he couldn't see me. The art gallery where we first met felt like a world away from my reality now. I could feel the pull of his magnetism, and it was hard to resist. I didn't want to lie to Jason, but I wasn't sure how to tell him the truth either. After a few more minutes of avoiding Jason's gaze, I finally said, "I'm going out for a bit." He looked up, surprised. "Where?" "Just to clear my head," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked, a hint of worry in his voice. "No, it's okay. I just need some time alone," I said, my heart racing. I could see the doubt in his eyes, but he didn't push further. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face like a splash of cold water. I drove to the gallery, each mile feeling like a step deeper into the unknown. When I arrived, my heart pounded in my chest. Would I find clarity or just more confusion? Ethan was already there, leaning against the wall, a smile breaking across his face when he saw me. "You made it," he said, his voice warm and inviting. I couldn't stay away, I admitted, feeling the rush of emotions that came with being near him. We moved through the gallery, but I barely noticed the art. My thoughts were consumed by the man beside me. "You've been on my mind a lot," he said, his eyes searching mine. "Me too," I whispered, the weight of my confession hanging between us. Then, things changed. In a moment of weakness, I found myself leaning closer to him, and before I knew it, our lips met. It was electric, a surge of feelings that left me breathless. But just as quickly, reality crashed back in. I pulled away, panic flooding my chest. "What have I done?" I gasped, the realization of my betrayal hitting me like a wave. Ethan's expression shifted to concern. "What's wrong?" "I'm married, Ethan. I can't do this," I said, my voice shaky. His gaze softened, but I could see the disappointment there. "I know, but what we have is real." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I need to think about Jason. I can't just throw everything away." As I stepped back, I felt utterly lost, caught between the shadows of my desires and the love I once cherished. In that moment, I realized that the path I was on could lead to heartbreak for everyone involved. The silence in our house felt heavy, like a thick fog that could not be lifted. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker, waiting for it to brew. Each drip echoed my racing thoughts, reminding me of the betrayal that had shattered my life. Jason sat at the dining table, his eyes fixed on the newspaper in front of him, but I could see the pain behind his facade. "Do you want coffee?" I asked, my voice barely breaking the silence. He looked up, his expression a mix of sadness and disbelief. "Sure," he replied quietly, as if the word was filled with unspoken weight. As I poured the steaming liquid into 2 mugs, I felt the guilt wash over me again. How could I have done this to him? The man who had shared my life for 5 years, who had trusted me completely. I placed the mug in front of him, watching as his fingers wrapped around it, but he didn't take a sip. "Do you think we can talk?" I ventured, hoping to bridge the emotional chasm that stretched between us. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "What is there to say, really? You've made your choice." The words struck me like a slap. I wanted to scream, to tell him that it wasn't that simple, but deep down, I knew I had to face the consequences of my actions. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Jason. I got lost in myself." He finally met my gaze, his eyes dark with hurt. "Lost? Or did you just not care enough to stop?" I felt the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I cared, I still care, but I got caught up in something I didn't understand. Ethan, he made me feel alive again. Jason's face hardened. "So what? You threw away everything we built together for a fleeting feeling?" I could feel the anger boiling in my chest, but I fought to keep it at bay. "It wasn't just a feeling. It was a moment of weakness, of confusion. I never meant to hurt you." He shook his head, the disappointment clear on his face. And yet, here we are. The memories of my time with Ethan flooded my mind, each one a reminder of what I had chosen over my marriage. The laughter, the thrill, the way he looked at me as if I were the only person in the room. But now, those memories felt like chains, pulling me down into despair. "I keep thinking about what we had," I said softly. "The passion, the love. I wonder if it can ever come back." Jason's eyes softened for a moment, but then the hardness returned. "Do you really think love can survive something like this? You've shattered my trust." "I know," I whispered, my heart aching. "But I want to try. I want to understand what happened and why I let it go so far." He looked at me, his expression a mix of hope and skepticism. "And how do you plan to do that? What if you still want him?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. I didn't have an answer, but I knew I had to confront my desires head on. "I don't know, Jason. I just know that I'm confused about everything. I need to figure out who I am without all this chaos." He took a deep breath, the tension shifting slightly. "Maybe we both need that, but it will take time, and I can't promise that I can wait forever." My heart sank at his words. "I understand. I just wish I could take it all back." Jason stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Wishing won't change anything. We need to face this, however painful it may be." I nodded, feeling the weight of our reality settle heavily on my shoulders. As I watched him walk away, the pain of my choices pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. I was lost, but I knew I had to find my way back. The memories of Ethan lingered in the corners of my mind, a constant reminder of what I had lost. I felt torn between the shadows of my past desires and the hope of rebuilding the love I once had with Jason. I had to confront my choices, but the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. As I sat on the edge of our bed, the soft light of the morning creeping through our curtains, I felt both anxious and hopeful. The weight of my choices hung heavily in the air. I knew I had to talk to Jason. It was time to face the mess I had made and try to find a way back to him. "Jason," I called softly, my voice barely above a whisper. He was in the kitchen making coffee, a ritual that had once brought us both comfort. I took a deep breath, and walked into the kitchen, my heart racing. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Hey," he said, his voice flat. I could tell he was guarded, and I didn't blame him. "I think we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. Jason nodded but didn't say anything. He turned back to the coffee maker, pouring the dark liquid into 2 mugs. The silence between us felt thick, like a heavy blanket that neither of us could lift. "Here," he said, handing me a mug. "I made it the way you like." I took the mug, the warmth seeping into my hands. "Thanks," I replied, trying to muster a smile. But the heaviness in my chest made it hard to feel light. "Look, I know things are complicated," I started, hesitating as I searched for the right words. "I've made mistakes, and I want to apologize. I want to understand why I did what I did." Jason's gaze met mine, and I could see the pain behind his eyes. "Do you really think talking will change anything?" he asked, his voice low. "You hurt me, and I don't know if I can just forget that." "I know," I said, feeling tears sting my eyes. "But I want to try. I want to learn from this. I want to understand myself better. I want us to heal." He took a deep breath, his expression softening just a little. "What do you mean by understand yourself better?" "I thought I was happy," I began, my voice shaking. But I lost sight of what really mattered. I let myself get caught up in the excitement of something new. I didn't stop to think about what I had with you. Jason looked away, staring out the window. "It's hard to believe you when you say that," he replied quietly. "You let someone else into our lives." "I know," I said, my heart aching at the truth of his words. "But I want to fight for us. I want to find a way back to what we had. Can you help me?" He took a moment, his silence stretching between us like a chasm. Finally, he turned back to me. "I don't know if I can trust you again." "I understand," I replied, my voice steady. "But I want to earn that trust back. I want to be open with you. I want to share everything, even the parts I've kept hidden." Jason's expression softened slightly, but I could still see the doubt in his eyes. "It's not going to be easy," he warned. "I'm ready for that," I said, feeling a spark of determination. "I want to take it one step at a time. Let's start with small moments. Let's talk more, laugh more. Remember why we fell in love." He considered my words, and for the first time, I saw a hint of hope in his eyes. "Okay," he said slowly. "We can try, but it's going to take time." "Time is all I ask for," I replied, a small smile breaking through my worry. "I'll do whatever it takes." As we sipped our coffee in silence, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We had a long road ahead, but this was the first step. The shadows of my past still lingered, but I was determined to chase them away. I reached for Jason's hand, squeezing it gently. "Let's take this journey together," I said softly. He nodded, and in that moment, I felt a flicker of the love we had once shared. It was fragile, but it was there. We had a chance to rebuild, and for the first time in a long while, I believed we could find our way back to each other. Standing at the edge of my emotions, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I was torn between 2 worlds, the familiar warmth of Jason and the fiery thrill that Ethan stirred within me. As I paced back and forth in my living room, the silence felt suffocating. I could almost hear the echoes of my heart, each beat reminding me of the decisions I had to make. That evening, I knew I had to meet Ethan one last time. The thought filled me with both excitement and dread. Our last encounter had been electric, but now I needed clarity. I texted him nervously, my hands shaking as I typed, "Can we talk? Just us." I hit send, feeling a mix of anticipation and regret. When Ethan replied almost immediately, "Of course. Where?" I chose the little cafe where we first laughed over coffee, the place where our connection had sparked. As I sat at a table by the window, I watched the world go by, my heart racing with every passing minute. Ethan arrived, his presence filling the room. He smiled, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made me nervous. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out a chair. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting in knots. "Thanks, Ethan. I wanted to talk about us," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. He leaned in, his blue eyes piercing through my defenses. "I've been thinking about you nonstop. What we have is special. You feel it too, don't you?" I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "Yes, I do, but it's complicated. I have Jason to think about." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. Ethan frowned, shifting in his seat. "Jason, he doesn't deserve you. You deserve to be happy, to feel alive. With me, you can have that." As he spoke, I felt the pull of his words, the lure of a life filled with passion. But then memories of Jason flooded my mind. His laughter, the way he held me when I was sad, the love we had built together. But what about love, Ethan? What about the life I built with him? Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms. Love? Love is supposed to make you feel free, not trapped. You're living in shadows, hiding from what you truly want. His words struck a chord, but I couldn't ignore the love I had for Jason. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I don't want to hurt anyone, especially Jason. He's been my rock." Ethan reached across the table, taking my hand. "You have to choose, though. Life is too short to live in regret. If you stay with him, you'll always wonder what could have been with us." His grip felt warm, but my heart was heavy with guilt. "I know," I whispered. The weight of my indecision hung between us, thick and suffocating. As the conversation continued, I realized I had to confront my feelings. "Ethan, I need to be honest. I've enjoyed every moment with you, but I can't just throw away my marriage. It wouldn't be fair to Jason, and it wouldn't be fair to us." Ethan's expression darkened, and he pulled his hand away. "So, that's it? You're choosing him?" "I don't know," I burst out, frustration boiling over. "I'm trying to figure out what love really means for me. Do I want the thrill, or do I want the safety of what I have?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I can't be a shadow in your life, waiting for you to decide. You deserve to feel alive, to chase your desires." In that moment, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I thought of Jason's smile, the way he worked hard to provide for us, and the promise we made to each other. I realized that love was not just about passion, it was also about commitment, sacrifice, and growth. "I need time," I finally said, my voice steadier. "I can't rush this decision. I want to explore what we have, but I also need to be honest with Jason. It's only fair." Ethan looked pained, but he nodded. "I understand. Just know what you're giving up." As he stood to leave, I felt a pang of loss. I had made my choice, but it didn't come without heartache. Watching him walk away, I felt the shadows of my desires linger, but I also felt a flicker of hope. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it, armed with the understanding that true love requires both vulnerability and courage. Share this story if you believe that love can conquer even the toughest challenges. Leave a comment about a time when an unexpected visit changed your life, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories like this one.